This is Friday's awesome edition of CNN 10. I'm Carl Azuz, welcoming everyone watching worldwide. We're starting in the U.S. state of California. Officials there don't know yet what started a new surge of wildfires, but they're spreading extremely fast, and one of them in Ventura County, northwest of Los Angeles, is almost 3 times larger than the worst fire we reported on in October. It's known as the Thomas Fire. At one point, it was scorching an acre every second. And as of last night, it was only 5% contained, which means most of this fire was burning wherever it could without boundaries. Throughout Southern California, 110,000 people have had to leave their homes. Hundreds of schools have been closed. 5,000 firefighters are involved in the fight. And witnesses have described affected areas as looking like a war zone. There are several factors making these blazes worse. For one thing, the summer heat dried out a lot of the region's vegetation, which is like fire fuel. Humidity in the area is a very low 7%. It's usually between 20 and 30%. And then there's the Santa Ana winds. They usually blow in from the desert this time of year. They're not usually this powerful, blasting gusts of dry 80-mile-per-hour winds across higher elevations. A state spokesman says the Santa Ana winds can push a fire the length of a football field in a minute. And they've been so strong that planes, which could normally drop thousands of gallons of fire retardant, have had to stay on the ground.
In the upscale neighborhood of Bel Air, there is still a battle going on here, trying to keep embers from homes that have burned from spreading. And the big concern throughout the evening and overnight will be the increase in the wind speeds, which are expected to get upwards of 70 miles per hour. That is extremely dangerous in these dry conditions where fire is only 5% contained in many of these fires as we get into the overnight hours. One of the other huge fires that's burning is, of course, down in Ventura. My goodness, that is an absolute vision of Armageddon as you watch what is happening there. But in Bel Air, the number of homes that have been damaged are incredibly small compared to how large the blaze was in the very beginning when the winds are higher. We are now hearing about 11 homes are damaged. 4 of them have been destroyed. So an incredible number, an incredible fight here. A lot of that fight from the air. Because there was a lull in winds, they were able to get at least some of the fires that were heading towards structures on the top of the canyon and below the canyon. They were able to stop those fires from burning through dozens of homes. Right now, though, the fight continues because the winds, again, picking up. A lot of worry in 4 different communities as these fires continue to go unabated. Sarah Seidner, CNN, Bel Air.
U.S. Senator Al Franken, a Democrat from Minnesota, announced yesterday he'd be resigning. The 66-year-old was first elected to the Senate in 2008, and he worked as a comedian before that, performing for years on Saturday Night Live. But over the past month, he's been accused of behaving inappropriately toward women, both before and during the time he's been in office. And though Franken has spoken out repeatedly against sexual harassment and said some of the accusations against him are false, other lawmakers pressured him to resign after several people came forward to accuse him. He said he'd leave the Senate in the coming weeks. After Franken's announcement, another one came last night. Representative Trent Franks, a Republican from Arizona, said he'd also resign. The 60-year-old was first elected to the House in 2002, and he'd worked in the Arizona state legislature before that, promoting laws and programs to protect children. But the House Ethics Committee was reportedly looking into claims of misconduct by Representative Franks. He said they were related to discussions he'd had that made 2 women he used to work with uncomfortable. He said he'd leave the House on January 31st. 10-second trivia. What happened in Chamonix, France in 1924? The first Winter Olympics was held, the first World Cup was held, the United Nations was established, or Van Gogh painted Starry Night? Chamonix was the site of the first Winter Olympic Games, though it was known at the time as Winter Sports Week. With the start of the 2018 Olympic Winter Games just over 2 months away, the host nation of South Korea has a couple unique challenges ahead of it. Usually, with the Games looming, there are concerns about readiness. Will the venues be finished? Will transportation be efficient? Will security be in place? But when it comes to the games in Pyeongchang, which is close to the border with North Korea and just a few hundred miles away from southeast Russia, concerns involving geography and geopolitics seem to be playing a bigger role.
As the Olympic torch makes its way around South Korea, problems are mounting for these Winter Games.
The Russian Olympic Committee is suspended with immediate effect.
One of the world's major winter sports powers is out, the IOC banning Russia for systemic manipulation of anti-doping rules. And is another major country wavering? US Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, was asked by Fox News if US attendance was set in stone.
There's an open question. I have not heard anything about that, but I do know that in the talks that we have, whether it's Jerusalem, whether it's North Korea, it's always about how do we protect the US citizens in the area.
For South Korea, there is no plan B. Officials say North Korea, just 50 miles or 80 kilometres away from Pyeongchang, does not pose a risk, referring to previous sporting events they have successfully held, including the Summer Olympics in Seoul in 1988. These were the final preparations in Pyeongchang a few weeks ago, transforming the area outside the stadium where the opening and closing ceremonies will be held. Park Sun-hae is the site manager. Personally, I don't think you need to worry, he tells me. No one round here is talking about North Korea. Ham Young-man has sold jewellery in the area for 40 years. He also dismisses security concerns. The slogan for the Games is the Peace Olympics. I believe tensions will ease and people from many countries will take part. Confident voices in the region that stands to lose the most if visitors stay away. 2 months out and lagging ticket sales enjoyed a boost from 100-day events and the torch relay. 54% have been sold as of November, slightly better than the Winter Games in Sochi 4 years ago. But organisers now have to contend not only with tourists put off by North Korea, but the likely loss of many Russian spectators if there's no national team to cheer on. Paula Hancox, CNN Seoul.
For the families who participate in a certain Christmas-time custom that involves elves that sit on shelves as a way to get kids to behave themselves, there's a rule that people can't touch the elves. Sadly, for one Florida family, that rule didn't apply to their German Shepherd. Thankfully, the family had a connection to an emergency room staff in Orlando. The elf in question was severely wounded. It was still mostly intact, but it was missing something that really bothered the family's 7-year-old. See, the dog decided the elf looked edible, or at least durable, so it attacked. But the mom happens to be a nurse manager at the Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children, and she assured her daughter there was nothing to fear. Sam, the elf, was brought into a trauma bay for surgery. Now, that rule of no touching the elf applies to everybody, so the medical team got hold of special operating gloves that apparently came right from Santa Claus, though CNN could not independently confirm that. Nurses reportedly used medical products that had expired to patch Sam up because you just never know when an elf is going to show up and need it. And in the spirit of Christmas-time magic, they added some medical glitter to give him some extra sparkle. Perhaps the biggest sparkle of all, though, was the girl's smile when Sam was installed back on her shelf and out of the dog's reach. One nice thing about Santa's workshop, it's got great elf insurance. That's a benefit of working for a saint. In the nick of time, nurses are able to North Pole off exceptional treatment and sew things up round the clock for a magical delivery back home, even if it was the night before Christmas. I'm Carl Azuz, wishing all a good night.